Good day and welcome back to another Pokemon video. This time we're in recovery mode, so if you watched the last video we were left in a pretty bad situation. We have only Martin left. Our latest battle with May basically kind of crippled us. We lost our starter Pokemon through a very poor battle decision as well. And yeah, we're kind of in a very tight spot. Now, we have to recover, and the only real way to recover is to do a couple things. So first thing we have to do is we're going to have to get all the way back down to Morphle Town. We're then going to have to shift off to the daycare, try and pick up our Pokemon that we left in the daycare. We need to find some more Pokemon, but unfortunately in this game we're very low on hybrid water types. So we don't have a lot of good hybrid water types, like at all, basically. I mean, Swampert is incredibly overpowered, but we just don't have the availability to obtain any other ones. So you're pretty much kind of stuck, because Lotad is in Sapphire, it's not in Ruby. So basically, we need to do a couple things. We got to get our way all the way back down to Morphle Town. In doing so, we have to essentially pick up some more Pokemon. We have very few routes that we also haven't really farmed on. For example, this current one that I'm going up, we farmed this one already. We already fished from here. So it's something that's pretty straightforward. In this process, though, we're going to have to obviously try our best to essentially pick up some additional Pokemon. And also pick up those ones that we have from the daycare. We're also going to then have to super farm our Pokemon pretty much, which is going to be something pretty important. We're going to have to farm and beef our Pokemon up quite substantially. And the only way to do that is to actually move past Fortree Town and literally move directly into the next area. Also, in hindsight, I made a mistake. I believe we hadn't actually fished here because we just ran past the end of the previous episode without realizing that this route was adjacent to the other route. So, yeah, a bit of a technicality. I can't remember if we got a Pokemon on this route, but hey. We're then going to move past Fortree City. You can see that obviously we haven't dealt with the Kecleons. What we're going to do here is we're going to get the Devon Scope, and we're actually going to push forward, fighting all the trainers pretty much up to Mount Pyre and the next city, and then we're going to jump all the way back. So we're going to, for the lack of a better term, we're going to essentially push forward and make sure that we defeat all the trainers, because the trainers that are between this city and the next are not inherently super duper powerful. They are decent, but they are not super duper powerful. So yeah, we are essentially how can I say, using the next set of trainers to farm up our Pokemon. A big tool that we're going to be using is Dragon Rage. Dragon Rage does set damage, does 40 HP damage. It's not a great move in terms of higher levels, because obviously it only does a set damage amount. So when Pokemon start to have 200, 300 health, it does substantially less in terms of damage. But the big thing is that at this point, it's very good for us. So it's a move that we're going to be using consistently to obtain Pokemon. And we'll get victory, grind our Pokemon. It's only got 10 PP, so we're going to have to kind of Poke Center juggle, use surf where we can, because obviously this is kind of actually now our motor HM Pokemon, but it is what it is. We're going to make our way back to Morphle as well and pick up our daycare Pokemon before we kind of push on. And while we're doing so, there's a couple Pokemon trainers that are due for a fight. So they're kind of like due for a, like rematch, so to say. Now in Ruby and Sapphire, you actually can see when they're ready for a rematch, because if you go to the trainer's eyes, you'll see that little shining icon, and that indicates they're ready for a rematch. Their Pokemon will also be stronger than what they were previously. Some trainers actually refresh, in inverted commas, a lot faster than other trainers. So they actually like refresh quite significantly, and they can be used almost to like farm levels. Now we're not necessarily going to do that, but because we're going to be shifting between Morville and the daycare, we are going to be, to a certain extent, juggling it up. So we are going to be catching additional trainers where we can. The triathlon athletes outside the daycare are a prime example of the Pokemon trainers that actually do refresh quite quickly. So while we're doing that, we're also going to pop some more Pokemon back in to the daycare as well, because while we are kind of motoring forward, we are going to be letting them level. So the reason for this is obviously, again, because it makes perfect sense. We can't, without using XP share, which is banned, we cannot use EXP share to level our Pokemon. So what we have to do, in theory, is we have to go and train up 1 or 2 Pokemon at a time, using the daycare as kind of like a fallback for levels. And if we don't place them in the daycare early enough, we're going to miss out on a lot of steps, which is a lot of XP. Remember, 1 step equals to 1 XP for that Pokemon, so it is important. Now, of course, the big important part was getting Marvin that first level, because even though he exceeded Gyarados' level cap, he needed to level up to evolve. And his evolution, super duper crucial, obviously, because it gives us a second Pokemon that can use Dragon Rage. By the way, look at us cutting things close here. And obviously, having 2 Gyaradoses lets us kind of shift them in and out to farm a lot. It also allows us, here's one of those rematches that I was talking about, it also allows us to actually partake in double battles again, which is really, really crucial. So partaking in those double battles is very, very crucial. And yeah, you can see me kind of inspecting it like Pokemon trainers, just seeing if they are ready for a rematch. Of course, I could check on the like Pokemon eyes or the trainer eyes, etc. But sometimes it's just easier, especially if you're in an area, to just like kind of, speak to them. It can save you a little bit of time. Now, of course, we move on downwards. We need to get to Mount Pyre, because Mount Pyre is a story situation that's not actually limited by the amount of badges you have and has no roadblock. So Mount Pyre is quite important for us, because we need to get to Mount Pyre so that we can obviously move on. And like, it's extra battles firstly, which is obviously super important. But not only is it extra battles, but it also enables us to push on forward with the story. And as well, Mount Pyre is in between us and another route, so it's going to be another area where we can pick up a Pokemon potentially. Even if we're picking up copies at this point, remember, we're still in recovery mode, so we need to recover like as many levels as possible, whilst also recovering actually as many Pokemon as possible. Because now the big thing is without a starter who's been eating up a lot of our EVs, and basically like picking up a lot of our XP, we're basically kind of stuck in a situation where we need to, I want to say, where we have to now farm like again. So you're not just resetting your EXP, you're not just like resetting your Pokemon. The Pokemon we have been raised through like shared XP. So they don't have a lot of EVs, they don't have a lot of extended stats. For people who don't know, EVs are effort values. You get them, through the amount of Pokemon you defeat. Certain stats will be increased generally speaking, using your starter to defeat most enemies means they're going to have a very generic stat pool, but they do pick up a lot of EVs very quickly. With the way we now have our team does not have a lot of EVs, and also Gyarados or Martin is our HM Pokemon. So now we're kind of stuck in this position whereby we are basically unable to like catch. The Pokemon we catch aren't going to have the same level of EVs. Now you can see here we're going to do some route juggling. So we're actually in Route 21 when we encountered that Tentacool, and we can shift directly into Route 22, which is really good. And that got really lucky, and we got a level 35 Tentacool, which is huge for two reasons. One, it means it's going to evolve very soon. So 1 level equals evolution. Not always the best, because like I say, you kind of want EVs and things like that. But for Tentacool, it's actually not so bad. And also it gives us a little bit more of a bigger HP pool Pokemon to potentially throw out if we need to. Now Tentacool doesn't really hit any crazy moves, but we do have the move deleter coming up in the next city, and that means we could potentially switch Tentacool to being our HM Pokemon. Not only that, but Tentacool also has the ability to learn Cut, and that's something that's very, very important. Pushing on further, we actually also managed to catch a Pelipper, which is going to be crucial that we get a Pelipper, because he's the only water Pokemon, and I say this very lightly, he's the only water Pokemon, I think, in inverted commas, that can use Fly. And obviously that's, crucial towards navigating the map. Otherwise we're going to be running a lot, but it's also not an issue. Running a lot is not a huge problem compared to what it would be if you were someone, playing the game normally, because we are, like I say, need the steps to level up our Pokemon. So we almost actually need like all of the steps to kick off, so that we can level up our Pokemon. So like it's kind of crucial actually to essentially like have this like level of mobility across the map. Like we every time we don't farm or don't move, every time we fly, we're actually missing out on steps. Now we continue along this way. The Safari Park is only going to open up to us when we have a Pokeblock case, and that's okay. That'll be something we'll address later on. The Safari Park is going to be an area where we are potentially going to get a very crucial Pokemon for us in the form of Psyduck. And Psyduck is very crucial because of a couple of reasons. So he can learn Ice Punch, he can have Psychic abilities, and it's kind of like one of the crucial type, I want to say type combinations that can really help us out. Because so far, a lot of the Pokemon we have, Tentacool is just essentially water poison. It's not too helpful. There's not too many high scale poison moves, although we will be trying to learn Sludge Bomb. We have a Water Dragon in the form of Gyarados, which is more than fine. We will be getting a Water Ice in the form of Dewgong, hopefully, or something along those lines if we can. And then Psyduck is also kind of one of those. Now obviously a Water Grass in the form of Lotad would have been really cool, but we can't get that in Sapphire. And obviously Water Earth would have been really nice with Swampert, but we lost him. We're also picking up an extra Magikarp because he was the first one we got in this route, and he's actually just going to be our sacrifice Pokemon. So we need to heal or do something. He's going in, and he's going to sacrifice himself, like pretty much wholeheartedly for the team, which is maybe not the nicest way to treat a Pokemon, but at this stage, like, we have to really take care of the Pokemon we have. And I would say at this point, losing either the Gyarados would probably be a hard reset. Like, we just wouldn't be able to finish. It would just be too difficult. because then you would be relying on daycare to push another Magikarp. We have a Barbaroach, which is fine, it'll become Wimcash, but just we just have, it'd be too difficult to recover. Basically, it'd be such a grind. But yeah, so at this point, obviously Cavill gets his extra level finally and evolves, which is really, really awesome. Why is he named Cavill? Because I was thinking of Henry Cavill at the time. Every good tentacle monster should be based on Henry Cavill. But yeah, at this point, we're trying to push some levels across, I would say, our big three. We have Marvin, Martin, and Cavill, which, are all in a decent range. Ideally, of course, Martin and Marvin would both be in the 40s, but at this point, it's like fine. We've recovered quite well. At Mount Pyre, also, we continue our quest to kind of gazump the Team Magma. Here, they have the magical orb. So they come and they steal the red orb from the Sky Pillar, which is quite interesting. Like the whole idea that they still really just want to create more landmass, which is an inherently flawed and just like consequentially bad idea, and I just don't understand how they never understood that. But yeah, luckily for us, we don't have to take on Maxi, which it wouldn't necessarily be a huge problem. He should be like easy enough for us at this level. But the reason why I say luckily enough, we don't need a risk kind of fight at this point. We just need to continue claiming and building up our pool of Pokemon and getting crucial levels to really kind of help push our Pokemon upwards. It's like really, really important at this point that we don't lose anyone else, because losing more Pokemon, just not a good call. Like, just not a great call. Would gimp us severely. So anytime we can avoid a hard fight, like there's May, who really wants to take us out in the town, and we just straight up avoid her. So she's blocking off actually the Pokemon, which we will have to unlock, but we are not going to be taking her on until we learn a hard counter to her, like what I assume will be a Survivor, if I remember correctly. So instead we hop back and take on the gym in Fortree. Now this is a scary fight for a couple of reasons. The Altaria is quite strong. Generally speaking, we handle everything okay because we do have dragon types, which is very fortunate. And like I said, at this stage, Dragon Rage is a very strong move. Dragon Rage is a very, very powerful move. Very strong, has like very good presence at this point because it's set HP. And at this point, the XP or the HP that units have is not intrinsically super high. So it's holistically possible to have Dragon Rage be a strong move. We also used this time period against a Swellow to set up. This was a bad call. The reason why is because Swellow actually himself sets himself up with double team. So now what's happening is he's using Endeavor, which is doing a lot of damage to us, and then he's using double team. And so while we were setting up with a whole bunch of X attacks and X speed and everything, he was setting up with double team. Not a good call by us. I should have taken out the Swellow easily and then pushed on to the next Pokemon rather, and used setup like situations with that Pokemon, because it just would have been better. Pelipper doesn't really do anything, so setting up with Pelipper would have been probably better overall, just in terms of like just generic kind of, I want to say abilities. So it would have been way better to potentially set ourselves up on Pelipper. Obviously not something we can intrinsically do or like retake, but it would have been better. It would have allowed us to set up, and then we actually probably would have just been able to clean sweep, but unfortunately we cannot. So No clean sweeping for us, unfortunately, which is always a bit of a shame. But yeah, it's, you know, it is what it is. We get to the Altaria, and yeah, we make a couple poor decisions here. So Sacrifice goes and dies instantly. That was always part of the plan. I switched in Winston, hoping that she would Earthquake again. Bad call. Should have just switched in Gyarados and done the Dragon's Rage and just ended the battle. Didn't, like, you know, had, I want to say, like a bit of a brain fart moment. Losing Winston is a huge kind of issue because that was our ride. But like I said, mobility helps us a little bit here. But yeah, so that's 4 tree down. We've recovered a little bit, so hopefully we're going to do well going into the next section. I don't believe, I think the last 2 badges, we have the Psychic badge, which we should be okay with, and then we have the Ice badge, which is going to be a bit of a problem. We're going to need to take out May, which is the big issue, and I think this is our last fight against May. So yeah, but that's it from me. Bye.